Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. May I welcome you to the first meeting of Cabinet in municipal year 2023-24, and particularly explain to those watching that it is a completely new Cabinet following the elections where the Liberal Democrats won the majority of seats and thus are forming Cabinet. Although I suspect that you won't see a huge amount of difference, at least not in the early days, as we work through a programme that was established previously. Do we have any apologies for absence?
No apologies, Chair.
Thank you. I have no announcements. Does the Head of Paid Service?
No, Chair.
Thank you. Do we have any declarations of interest? None. Minutes. I have made inquiries, and previous Cabinet is content that these are accurate minutes. So can we have everybody's approval, please? Yeah, it's unanimous. Items raised by scrutiny. Because of the changes with the election, the chairman of scrutiny isn't with us and was not indeed a councillor, the current chairman of scrutiny, when scrutiny committee considered this report. So I will read it out and we will decide how we're going to react to it. Concern regarding the monitoring and enforcement of the contract conditions and alleged breaches of contract. That was the issue, and it was in relation to minerals contract. And the recommendations from scrutiny were recommended to the leader that the minerals waste was explicitly identified within a portfolio and that the portfolio holder and members received a quarterly overview report regarding the progress of the minerals waste contract and the monitoring visits, and that the details of the monitoring visits should be shared with the Rutland Quarry Forum. Now, that's the first recommendation. I didn't do that. It hadn't been brought to the attention of Cabinet when we were establishing portfolios, but I do propose now identifying the appropriate Cabinet member to have lead for minerals within his portfolio, and that's Councillor Paul Brown, who is the portfolio holder for planning and obviously now minerals. And I would ask Councillor Brown to enact the part of that recommendation relating to monitoring and so on. I'm sure he will do that extremely well. Number 2, recommended that Cabinet considered the SMART objectives within the minerals waste contract and developed them to be SMART, i.e. more robust. Recommendation 3 was recommended to Cabinet that the minimum planning conditions as detailed in the Greetham Quarry contract should be adopted as the standard for future quarrying contracts by Rutland County Council. And recommendation 4, that Cabinet should undertake to investigate a plan to increase minerals monitoring and enforcement skills / resource and review potential funding through the local plan funds, monitoring visits and planning fees. Now, those are all quite involved, and Councillor Brown has only just this morning taken on responsibility, so I don't expect him to have all the answers immediately. So I suggest that those remaining 3 recommendations are very valid, and Scrutiny Committee did spend a lot of time discussing them and had very thoughtful discussion on them, that Councillor Brown considers them with Mr. Ransom and reports back to Cabinet within the next 3 months because I think there's quite a bit of work to do there, isn't there? I can see Mr. Ransom nodding. So could that be noted, please? Thank you. And could that also be reported back to scrutiny so they are aware, please? Thank you very much. Item number 6, recommissioning of public health, sexual health services for Rutland. And I call on Councillor Ellison to introduce this report.
Thank you. This is a report on the need to replace the service within Rutland. Previously, it had been provided by Leicester, Leicestershire and Rutland combined, but due to COVID and other factors, it's at the end of the contract. It's now deemed that it needs to be taken forward. So the report, as was written before I came into post, so I've had to read it with a fresh pair of eyes. It's very well written. However, and what it's done is said that there needs to be continued provision of, obviously, of sexual health services within the Rutland area. There are a range of recommendations to be considered by Cabinet. The background was completed in quite some detail with some quite good analysis and research of demand. There has been a change in demand and a variation of uptake, mainly because of COVID, but also I think more online accessibility. So individuals don't need to go to Leicester City. Therefore, why involve that journey and that cost? So the new model explains this and reflects that change, allowing greater access and closer access. There are some good performance management monitoring involved in there, which, if adhered to, I think will give us value for money. There is a concern I had, but that was just to make sure that the communication is adequate for particularly the local teenagers in the area. So there are, it's a well-written, well-researched piece of work. Funding was compared, and there's an increase in cost, which is not surprising, and which not a huge amount at all, but also a greater provision locally, with another location being suggested in Rutland, but more access via online services. And the service is like for like and enhanced, so getting a better value for money. Thank you.
That we do have Susan Louise Hope and Adrian Allen, if you want to hear more about who wrote the paper, and to answer any questions as well that might be useful.
I think there might be, because they know more about it than I do, if that's all right.
So that was a very good summation of it. Thank you.
Good morning, colleagues. I'm Adrian Allen.
Before we ask them to come in, are there any particular questions that the officers can address in what they want to say to us? I have one, please, if you could address that, and that is the shift from face-to-face to online. Are there going to be people who wanted face-to-face who now won't be accessing, and how are we going to monitor that we've got the same reach, or indeed an improved reach with the changes in the service?
Okay, thank you. So, good morning, colleagues. I'm Adrian Allen. I'm Assistant Director in Public Health in Leicestershire and the Public Health Lead for Rutland. Susan Louise Hope is the Strategic Lead for Rutland, and has written this paper and has been working on the sexual health recommissioning for Rutland with Leicestershire colleagues. I'm going to ask Susan Louise to address your question shortly. I just wanted to emphasise that the new service that we're proposing to put forward for Rutland does maximise choice. There has been a real swing in activity during COVID. A lot of that has come off the back of COVID, but there is also a genuine feeling that people want to access services in different ways. There's been a lot of learning coming out of COVID, so we're really confident following the consultation that this will give a better choice of services for people in Rutland, and is very much focused on Rutland need, whereas in previous years some of the Rutland need has been swallowed up into Leicester City, in terms of the Leicester City Centre. So I'm going to bring Susan Louise in, who will be able to answer your question in terms of online versus face-to-face delivery.
Hello, yes, I'm Susan Louise Hope, Strategic Lead for Rutland. I think actually I can answer this question by likening it to when we came out of the COVID restrictions, because certainly when we had the COVID restrictions, we had to shift a lot of activity to either online or being telephone based. And then as we came out of those restrictions, we started to encourage the provider to revert back to not exactly what they were doing before, because it was quite clear there needed to be change, but to actually start to restore the face-to-face activity. And one of the areas that was the slowest to be restored was the walk-in facilities, for people to just be able to walk into the clinic and see somebody at the clinic. And that was one of the last areas to be restored. And that is highlighted the importance of making sure that there are options for people, so that the online mechanism is a way of facilitating people having ease of access. But if somebody needs to be seen or chooses to be seen, then that option is always going to be available for them to be able to do so. And it would be something that would be monitored through the performance management of the contract, that option is still there for people. But also as well, by enhancing the local delivery and giving people more options of where they could potentially be seen, and being seen in the appropriate place for the appropriate intervention, then we feel that that is going to actually alleviate a lot of the concerns that you may have about it sort of forcing people onto the online service. What we also want to do with the online is not create any barriers to people accessing treatment, that they, if we sort of try to restrict something, then you're automatically putting things in people's way. And by having a range of options for how people can easily get into the service, then that should improve their experience. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, it does. Thank you. Any other questions? Anything else the officers wish to say? Kim?
Could I? Susan Louise, it might be worth talking about because Rutland is lower on detection rates for chlamydia, and how this contract will target that area and improve our rates for Rutland.
Yeah, that is something that has been a concern with the existing contract for a while, because while there's quite a lot of testing, the positivity rate is actually very low. So we're not testing the right people, and that's why the rates are so low. So I think by again having sort of more localized delivery, we can promote the chlamydia testing using GP practices, for example, that sort of know their patients better than anybody else, can actually help target the right people. So you're testing the right people that are most at risk, and then your detection rates, if you're testing the right people, are going to improve.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anything else you wanted to add, Kim? Okay, thank you. Yes, please.
Yes, from my point of view, I'm concerned about teenagers, and I'm wondering, this new system, is it likely to make it easier for teenagers to access this service, or is it likely to make it more difficult for teenagers to? What's the experience of going online? Is it something that improves access for teenagers or makes it more difficult?
It probably does in terms of accessing through the online service. Teenagers are probably more adept at sort of accessing things online than older age groups, so that it doesn't sort of unnecessarily disadvantage them. They also have, access to the multimedia platforms that enable you to access the online service. What we found in the consultation, and something that did get mentioned by a group of teenagers, was that when they needed to be seen by somebody, when they wanted to have face-to-face, that was quite difficult for them, because a lot of clinics were doing sort of appointment-based only and not doing walk-in, and that didn't necessarily fit in with the teenagers, commitments and how they had to sort of run their lives. Also, as well, the city-centric nature of the current configuration meant that teenagers would be having to go into Leicester City, and that might mean they have to talk to their parents about going into the city, and they might not necessarily want their parents to know. So I think from that perspective, by again bringing in sort of more local delivery and having those opportunities for teenager to be seen locally, that is going to facilitate them when they actually do want to see somebody face to face. Because sometimes what the online service doesn't do is it doesn't necessarily allay your concerns and give you the opportunity to talk to somebody about those concerns. And that's what teenagers, felt that they do actually want to go and see somebody and talk to somebody. And we need to make sure that that facility is available for them. And I think using this kind of system of having more localized delivery and options for people that way, then we think our reach into that age group would be better.
There will also be a linking with the Rutland Teen Health Officers and local community workers, which is part of the new 11 to 19 service that was split out from the previous 0 to 19 service. So those officers are working really closely with schools and will be able to be accessed by teenagers either through the school setting or via the service and the links as well.
Okay, that's very reassuring, and I suspect that teenagers will find access via the internet much more at ease. And I can take the point about not having to get mum to give them the bus fare to go into Leicester, so I can see that. There's another group I'm interested in as well, which is the armed forces. Now we have a significant armed forces contingent here in Rutland, and I'm not trying to cast any aspersions, but thinking of the covenant. Will these services be made available to the armed forces, or are they in fact using their own facilities and their own medical services to deal with this issue?
We currently have an outreach location at Kendrew Barracks, and that will continue under the new model. The armed forces are a significant population in the Rutland area, and we felt that the best, a good way of servicing that population is by having a presence on the actual barrack site itself to facilitate people being able to access sexual health services. They can also access, any of the other services that, there's a clinic that takes place in Oakham. They could access that if they so wished as well. So the services will be open, to them to access in the same way as everybody else, but they will also have a dedicated clinic on the barracks.
Okay, well, thank you for that. That's all very reassuring. Thank you very much.
I have one follow-up question in relation to the teenagers. You mentioned that there are staff working with our schools. A significant number of Rutland young people aged 11 to 19, education age, aren't educated in Rutland. How are you reaching out to them?
I think that, we're aware that Rutland has more cross-boundary issues than perhaps other local authority areas have. So we will be making links with the neighbouring areas so that if pupils are sort of at other schools, that they know where to go to if they need those kind of services. But also as well, the requirement under the public health grant is for there to be open access sexual health services. So you can get people that will go to services out of area, and then those recharges come back to the area of residence. So they will have the facility of going to services that, say, if they're at a school in Northamptonshire, they will have the facility to go to services in Northamptonshire, but we will make those links to those other areas to ensure that they're aware of what we have going on in our area.
My concern is their awareness, not where they go, because for a number of young people, they'll get the school bus and to school or college and get it home again. They don't spend any time in the town that they're going to for their education. So they'll still be looking for services within Rutland. It's, do they know? How do they know? That is the basis of the question.
It's going to be a requirement in all the service specifications that there is an element of promotion, including health promotion. So there will be an expectation that they will actually be publicising and making the population aware of what services they offer, where those services are going to be, the times that they operate, and actually giving out sort of the good, harm reduction messages that they need to give out to people in order so that people may keep themselves safe. So there will be that kind of activity going on as part and parcel of what they're contracted to provide.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, well, we'll move on to the recommendation. Number one is to note the outcomes of the public consultation on sexual health services for Rutland, and I assume we all note it, having read the papers. Number two, approves the proposed model for sexual health services and the procurement route. Can I have a proposer, please? Thank you, Councillor Ellison. Seconder? Thank you, Councillor Payne. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Number three, authorise the Director of Public Health in consultation with the portfolio holder with responsibility for public health and the Strategic Director for Adults and Health to approve the final value of the contract within budget set. Can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Ellison, seconder. Councillor Payne, all those in favour? Unanimous, thank you. Number four, authorise the Director of Public Health in consultation with the portfolio holder with responsibility for public health and the Strategic Director for Adults and Health to approve the final award criteria. Proposer, please. Thank you. Seconder, thank you. All those in favour? Thank you very much. And finally, authorise the Director of Public Health in consultation with the portfolio holder with responsibility for public health and the Strategic Director of Adults and Health to approve the contract award in line with the award criteria. Proposer, thank you. Seconder, thank you. All in favour? Thank you very much. Thank you very much as well. Moving on then. Whissendine Neighbourhood Plan. Councillor Brown, can I call on you to introduce this, please?
Thank you, Chair. First, I'd like to say that reading through this and also the Wing paper, it does great credit to everybody who has been involved in this. They've gone into great detail, they've gone into great thoroughness, and it is a credit to the communities to produce such a comprehensive document. And it also shows that they've showed individual approaches. The Whissendine has one format, which is comprehensive in itself and very detailed, but Wing has chosen a different type of format. And it just shows how the level of knowledge and ability within each of those respective communities, and they are to be praised. Turning to Whissendine in the first instance, we are looking at an ancient village which has got a population of 1,250 people. Despite its age, it is very much more now a sort of a residential area in itself, and that has come with its own problems, which have been very clearly highlighted within the report. The biggest problem they have addressed locally within the report is the problem with the flooding. It shows that the report that it is very much a thick clay area with underlying impervious limestone, which has caused considerable flooding within the village itself, particularly as the stream goes through the bottom of the village and leading through to the Eye and the Reek. 100% of the respondents, which was and the way they conducted the consultation was impressive, and 100% of those who responded did itemize this as one of their main problem within the village itself, and that has its effect also on the development of the area. It is not a conservation area, and it has planned limits of development, and most of those have been already occupied. There is very limited area within those planned limits, and indeed the report doesn't make any spatial recommendations for further development. Specifically, they base this on in Appendix A on a cabinet meeting and the methodology producing this of November 21, which produced figures saying that 10 larger villages would be expected to have 466 new houses between 21 and 41. That works out at 47 each area, or 1/10 of that number. And they have relied on this, saying that they already have a grant of 66 new ones in 2022, a small development, and there is another small development of 18. So they regard this fact that they have complied with the cabinet methodology. But the only problem with that slightly for them could be as if the local plan itself does change. And of course, the local plan can redefine various aspects of this. And as such, that would be they're relying on this indicative methodology would probably be slightly problematical for them. It doesn't open them to any less weighting on any planning applications, provided we don't go below the 5-year housing supply. In that case, it would affect it. However, as I say, it is very limited where they could do, and they are quite happy as to what they can do. The surface water issue is part of their policy WH7. They don't want any development to cause any detrimental impact on surrounding lands, and that in itself will cause a problem if those further lands were developed. They have identified where they wish to spend more money. A big requirement for an outdoor gym and improving the existing clubhouse, and they regard affordable homes that may come into their areas should be 60% rented and 40% ownership, which is quite impressive, I think, from their point of view. So I have great pleasure in recommending this, and I think it is a superb piece of work, and they clearly have addressed every problem that they could consider, and I know that it will be a strong document in their favour.
Thank you. Are there any questions from anyone? Mr. Ransom, do you wish to make any comment?
Just to note that this is the work that, as Councillor Brown has been pointed out, has been conducted by the community at the moment. They have now submitted the plan to the County Council, so it's our responsibility to take it through its next stages, which is the reasons for the recommendation. So that involves a further stage of public consultation, which the County Council will undertake. Following on from that, there'll be a process of examination of that plan through an independent inspector, who we will agree with the local parish council as to who that will be. That inspector produces a final report. That report comes back to the County Council to then make a decision on making the plan, what's called, to take it. And at that stage, it becomes part of the development plan process scheme. And the planning law dictates that decisions on planning applications should be made in accordance with the development plan, which is both the local plan and the neighbourhood plan, unless material circumstances determine otherwise. So what we're looking at this stage has the plan meet what's called its basic conditions. So is it compliant with national policy? Have they undertaken the consultation that they should do at their stage? Is it in general conformity to the strategic policies of the local plan, which at the moment currently will be the core strategy and site allocations and policies document. So we're confident it's reached that stage, and therefore we can now move forward with the future stages of getting this plan made, and those stages are the responsibility for the County Council to undertake.
Thank you. Are there any questions from anyone? No. Thank you for your comprehensive introduction, Councillor Brown, and for your clarification, Mr. Ransom. But even more thanks to the people of Whistendine for the extremely hard work that they have put in to produce the documentation before us today. I can't imagine how much time it took individuals. We are being asked, I'll go to the recommendations, we are being asked to agree that, number one, the draft Whistendine neighbourhood plan is published for public consultation for a minimum of 6 weeks. 2, following public consultation, the draft plan and representations received are submitted for independent examination. 3, the strategic director of places be authorised to appoint an independent examiner in consultation with the Whistendine Neighbourhood Plan Group. 4, that following receipt of the examiner's report, that the strategic director of places, in consultation with the portfolio holder for planning and property, be authorised to publish the County Council's decision notice, update the Whistendine Neighbourhood Plan and undertake a referendum. And 5, subject to the outcome of the referendum, that the strategic director of places, in consultation with the portfolio holder for planning and property, be authorised to make the Whistendine Neighbourhood Plan part of the development plan for Rutland. Do I have a proposer? Thank you, Mr. Brown. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Ellison. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. We move on then to the next item, another neighbourhood plan, this time Wing. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. Again, but this time a much smaller village, but no less thorough in their approach and abilities they've exhibited in preparing this plan. It is most comprehensive, and as I said beforehand, it does have a distinct different flavour to that of the Whistendine plan, which is absolutely fine, and it is just shows the independence of the each area in the way they actually present matters. This is what is called a small village centre. So it has, under the old core policies, a limited range of facilities which can accommodate a minor scale of development, mainly on previous developed land, on a limited scale appropriate to the character and needs of the village, comprising affordability sites and conversion and reuse of redundant suitable rural buildings, and that's CS4. And they've taken a very positive view of this, and they've offered two separate views, sites on their limited area they've got. They do have planned limited developments, and they refer to it here as settlement boundaries. They offer one site immediately, well, not immediately, but they offer one site for possible consideration. And this time they've split it down into how they want it. 2 bungalows, 2 affordable homes, and 4 other independent homes. That is on a site which is one of the very few, again, available on the far eastern side of the village. Sorry, if you look at it the other way around, it's northwest. They've also offered a possible secondary site very close by, and again have suggested on this occasion 2 bungalows, 2 affordable homes, and 2 3-bedroom homes. There's some doubt over whether it has a conservation area status according to the report, and they say that needs review and affirmation. No doubt that can be addressed when the local plan itself takes effect. Longhurst Homes have various the control of those council houses there, and they have former council houses, and they have instigated things like air source heating in them, and that is to be only applauded. The village itself, in their consultation, decided that by 65% wanted to attract younger people, and 54% said the new housing should only be on smaller developments. So they've given a clear lead as to how they see their development further continuing. So that is quite, I think, good, considering the age demographic of the existing population. They're showing a very great positive approach. They have given a spatial nomination for future development, and I think it is to be greatly applauded the way they have constructed and gone about this report.
Thank you very much. Mr. Anson, do you want to comment on the conservation area status that Councillor Brown mentioned?
Yes, Wing does have a conservation area. The issue with a lot of conservation areas within Rutland is that they've been well designated for a long time. So up to recently, there hasn't been a process of appraising and reviewing those. So that has started over the last few years. There's been, I think, about 6 done so far. There's 35, and now that we have a conservation officer in post, we're now putting in place a programme to start reviewing those, but it's a slow process. So there's no guarantee at the moment about when a review for Wing be undertaken that has status as conservation area at the moment.
Thank you, that's helpful.
I would just say, I was just quoting them from their own report, where they said they made inquiries and said that it wasn't clear.
I think we have to recognise that these pieces of work that we're looking at today, these neighbourhood plans, take a couple of years to come to the point we've got them here now. And it's quite possible that they made their inquiries at the beginning of the process before we had the current conservation officer in post. So I think it's perfectly understandable that they wrote what they wrote. And I think it's to be applauded that we're actually in a position now to start reviewing them again. Any questions from anyone? No. Was there anything else you wish to say, Mr. Ransom? No. Fine, thank you. All right, we are being asked to agree that 1, the draft wing neighbourhood plan is published for public consultation for a minimum of 6 weeks. 2, following public consultation, the draft plan and representations received are submitted for independent examination. 3, the strategic director of places be authorised to appoint an independent examiner in consultation with the wing neighbourhood plan group. 4, that following receipt of the examiner's report, that the strategic director of places in consultation with the portfolio holder for planning and property be authorised to publish the county council's decision notice, update the wing neighbourhood plan and undertake a referendum. 5, subject to the outcome of the referendum, that the strategic director of places in consultation with the portfolio holder for planning and property be authorised to make the wing neighbourhood plan part of the development plan for Rutland. And I have a proposer, please. Thank you, Councillor Brown. Seconder, Councillor Ellison, I just saw first. All those in favour, please. It's unanimous, thank you. Okay, moving on. We are now moving on to 2 reports concerning contract awards. And as is normal in this type of report, there are elements which are confidential. These are in appendices that are not available on the public website. As is our custom, we will endeavour to discuss this report as far as we can in public. And I'm sure the legal officer will draw my attention to anything that anybody says that we shouldn't be saying, and I will stop you if you do. But I think it's quite possible to discuss both of these contracts completely in public. I don't think there's any need to go into the confidential elements, but we will if we have to. So can I call on Councillor Wise to introduce the report on the award of the forestry contract, please?
Thank you, Chair. As you said, we're asked to approve the award of the forestry contract. This, the process we inherited from the previous administration. And in fact, I'm presenting a report having had limited input into the process. There has, however, been a lot of work leading up to the production of this paper through the procurement process, and I think we'd like to thank all those involved in that process. This new contract is due to commence on the 1st of January 2024, due to last 5 years with the option to extend for a further 2 years. There is a new quality that bidders were asked to make their bids against, which was social value. This is what they offer back to the community from having received that contract. Following public consultation, in the build-up to, as part of the procurement process, additional tree planting formed part of the main contract and was considered in the social value offered by bidders. The successful bidder, I would like to draw your attention to section 13.2, and as we don't want umpteen pages turning, I'll read out the key bit. The winning bidder was committed to replacing all vehicles with low emission models in the next 5 years, the use of cleaner and quieter battery powered tools, over 95% of timber being recycled or reused, employment of local people, and the planting of 10 trees per year at zero cost to the council at an agreed suitable site. So that's what the successful bidder offered as their social value. It is to be noted that the new rate on the contract is 15% higher than the old rate. This was felt to be reasonable given the inflation and changes. But direct comparisons are difficult because an awful lot of the forestry contract is ad hoc. We have no decision over which trees are going to be blown over or how many. So with a low wind for the next 5 years, we may not have a very high bill.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Any questions? Councillor Payne?
Thank you. Yes, I mean, one of the points I liked out of this is my planning hat on here, is the idea of encouraging developers to plant more trees. Now, stealing my thunder there. And I'd like this idea to be taken more into our thoughts on planning. I'm sure I know that a couple of councillors weren't here when we had a very informative local plan discussion, which I know a number of the officers were at, where a number of very knowledgeable people about trees and green issues generally brought the idea of sustainability and raised the whole level of the debate. And I, for one, came away from that thinking I haven't taken trees seriously enough. I haven't considered them enough in the planning. We perhaps have been too inclined to knock them down and loop and cut, and maybe not thought of them in a green sense in terms of their carbon capture and, you know, what you lose when you knock down a mature tree. So I think, you know, as a county, we need to look more at the idea of getting more trees into the ground, and one of the ways of doing it, of course, is to get developers to plant more trees. So I'd like that to become much more upfront in terms of our planning.
I think we would all agree with that. And also, I think we would like to see, when spaces are being developed, to avoid cutting down trees that are already there. And I think those of us who've been councillors for a while have all had cases of that in our wards. I think Mr. Ransom wants to come in, but I suspect he's going to tell us that there are laws around planning and there is a limited amount to what we can do.
Obviously, we're in the process of preparing a new local plan, and I think Councillor Payne's referring to some of the evidence base that we've been sharing with members about that. So at the moment, while we live, you know, this is a beautiful county, it does have a low woodland cover attached to it. So, you know, we will be planning to bring forward a local plan which will look to address issues around biodiversity net gain, you know, landscape impact and items like that. So watch out for those, I guess, in terms of that, and see what we can put forward within that. That plan has obviously got a way to go through, and the important next stage of that plan is either as a cabinet you support that plan and to go out for consultation, but equally we maximise the opportunities for consultation so that issues such as that can be considered and addressed as part of producing a final plan, which will then be submitted to the government.
Thank you. Chief Executive.
Thank you. I was just going to point out that obviously beyond the local plan, there's a debate around how we manage the public realm. And clearly, certainly in public spaces, and more trees means more cost to authority to manage those trees, potentially. So there's a balance there for us as an authority about what we want in one policy and its effect in terms of cost in other areas. So something that we'll be looking at in terms of balancing as part of our public realm strategy for you to decide where you think the balance lies.
Thank you. Councillor Payne.
Thank you. Yes, I accept that, of course. Yes, there's no such thing as a free tree, but it's interesting. I share this with some of our colleagues who were at these meetings, how the positive process of the local plan has brought issues to light that may not have been issues 3 or 4 years ago when the last local plan was attempted, and definitely forestry is one of those issues that has been raised in profile for all of us, and it's because of, we'll call it the green agenda, but I don't, you know, the idea of sustainability, the idea of putting back more than we're taking out. And this is part of the process. And I actually think this is a very healthy part of the process. And so I think all of us involved in it can take some heart that at least we're on the right trail now. The question is how quickly we can push that through. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any further questions or comments on the forestry contract? In which case, we are being asked to, one, approve the award of the forestry contract to the overall highest scoring bidder. And scoring isn't just on price alone, of course. And two, authorises the Director for Places in consultation with the Cabinet member with portfolio for highways, transport and the environment to award the contract resulting from this procurement in line with the award criteria. Do I have a proposer, please? Thank you, Councillor Wise. Seconder, thank you, Councillor Brown. All in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. Moving on then, the second of the contracts before us this morning, again, same conditions as before. We will endeavour to discuss it as we have just done entirely in the public domain. If that proves to be impossible, then we will go into private session. Councillor Wise, would you like to introduce it?
Thank you, Chair. In a similar way to the previous paper, this is a process that was set up by the previous administration. And as with the previous paper, there's been a lot of work leading through the procurement process and to this paper, and we'd like to thank those involved in that. Again, this is due to commence on the 1st of January 2024. It's for 5 years with a possible extension of a further 2. At the public consultation for this contract, a substantial number of the public felt that mowing frequency could be reduced to benefit biodiversity and wildlife. There were also, it has to be said, a significant number that felt we weren't keeping the grass short enough. Previously, we've done 10 cuts per year in urban areas. And it has been decided to reduce this to 6 in the new contract. There was an extensive benchmarking process, which is detailed in the paper against other local authorities. And Rutland was very much an outlier in doing 10 cuts per year. So there are some that only do 2 even in urban areas. We haven't gone quite that far. 6 seemed a good number. Again, social value was included in the contract. There also a change in this contract is councils that undertake their own verge trimming are paid an amount, and I haven't written down how much, I suspect per square metre or whatever, and that rate has been increased to take account of increased costs. However, with our council regime reducing 6 cuts a year, they will only be funded for 6 cuts a year at that higher rate. There is a councillor, I have been approached by a councillor asking, why is this going externally? Why is this not an in-house contract? And I'd like to say that as I'm new to the portfolio and new to the council, I can't answer that question. The details of that are not in the paper, and so I can't consider that as part of the process today.
Thank you. I'm sure you will get an answer and convey it to the councillor, though, in due course. I have a question, and it relates to something you've mentioned, that the payment we're going to make to parish councils who undertake their own cutting is increasing, but the number of cuts is reducing. Have parish councils been advised of this? Because some of them don't use our grass cutters. They have their own people, their own contracts, and they may already have contracted for 10 cuts a year.
I can confirm that they haven't as yet been informed. I am suggesting that until we have agreed the 6 cuts, we were still under the impression we were doing 10 until this contract is agreed.
Thank you. Any questions from anyone else? No? In which case, can we move to the recommendations? And the recommendations are that we recommend to council that it approves the award of the grounds maintenance contract. And that's because of the value of the contract. It's a council decision. And 2, recommends to council that it authorises the Director for Places, in consultation with the Cabinet member with portfolio for highways, transport and the environment, to award the contract to the highest scoring bidder resulting from this procurement in line with the award criteria. Can I have a proposer, please? Thank you, Councillor Wise. Seconder. Thank you, Councillor Brown. All in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. I have not been advised of any items of urgent business. The next meeting of the council is Tuesday, the 11th of July, and I think it's 11 o'clock. Thank you for the nod there. So I close the meeting at 11 a.m. Thank you.